Well, they had a Judiciary Committee hearing, and Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett had to school her GOP colleagues on the basics of the U.S. Constitution. She had to remind everyone the Fifth Amendment guarantees due process even for immigrants. Well, those remarks she made did not sink in. This is what happened when California Congressman Kevin Kiley decided he wanted clarification from the Congresswoman,
who accused me and my colleagues over here of ignoring the Constitution. And if that were true, that'd be a very serious matter. So I did want to just inquire as to what exactly the accusation is. So I'll happily yield to the gentlewoman from Texas if she'd like to respond. Do you believe that someone who has snuck into our country, entered the United States illegally, that the due process requirements for that individual are the same as they are for a U.S. citizen?
I thought the question was for me, but it seems like the lawyers on this side or just my entire team knows the answer.
Mr. Chairman?
Per the Constitution, yes, if you are on our soil, you are guaranteed due process. And the fact that there's even a question is why we are struggling right now. In addition to, an additional issue that I have is the executive order that was signed by the president that seemed to get rid of birthright citizenship, which also is laid out in the Constitution, which is why even the most conservative judges have ruled against. There is no one that has ruled that that was okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So,
thank you.
That's simply untrue. The Supreme Court has made it very clear that due process is a context-dependent inquiry. And someone who is here illegally in this country facing deportation, the requirements of due process are specific to that context.
So I just want to clarify, and I know that there's lawyers on that side. It's just like we have different standards in general. Like you have a higher standard when it comes to a criminal case versus a civil case, right? So it's preponderance is going to be the burden on a civil case, and then it's going to be higher as it relates to a criminal case, right? It's beyond a reasonable doubt. That is going to be the burden of proof. When the Supreme Court was making distinctions, the distinctions weren't necessarily between is this person a citizen or is this person not. It wasn't a matter of certain people are not allowed to have due process, but it's kind of like there's different ways to evaluate things. The amount of protections that you are going to have in any criminal case. If you think about those that are charged with murder, whether they are a citizen or not, guess what? The burden of proof is still going to be the same. The burden of proof is still going to be beyond a reasonable doubt. There was never a distinction that said somehow, dependent upon your status, you somehow lose your access to due process. And frankly, that is honestly the only thing that the Supreme Court has been consistent on, is that there are due process rights that are going to be afforded to everyone that is found within our jurisdiction in the United States. I have not seen a case where they have said, no, it's okay for someone not to have due process. That is why the plane that was about to leave Texas, they said stop the plane literally at 1 a.m. because there had not been due process for those that were currently being held in the administration's custody. And thank you so much.
Thank you. I think I understand your position a little better now. I can't say I agree with everything you said, but I would just say perhaps be careful with throwing out accusations or ignoring the Constitution, without carefully considering those statements, because the demands of due process is not just something that is the same in every context. It's
Mr.
very
Chairman,
much
I have
so I yield back.
a unanimous consent request.
Gentlelady is recognized for unanimous consent.
I'd like to submit for the record the Constitution of the United States Fifth Amendment explained, so that the gentleman can see exactly what is in the Constitution, where it says no person shall be deprived of due process.
I would just point out the Supreme Court, as the gentleman from California has said, has firmly, I'm quoting the Rehnquist from Justice Rehnquist, has firmly and repeatedly endorsed the proposition that Congress may make rules as to aliens that would be unacceptable if applied to citizens.
But currently the Constitution says
it's not the same process due American citizens.
Mr. Chairman, it just says no person.
The Fifth Amendment will be entered in front of the Judiciary Committee's record.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to make sure everybody knows what the Fifth Amendment says.
We will take
Maybe
that.
we could introduce the 14th Amendment too, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, that's fine too. Well, you can introduce the whole Constitution. God bless you.
Greg, I was having a heart attack over here.
Man, fuck. No. Listen to this bastard. You can introduce the whole Constitution. The only 3 words that mean anything in what he said at the end were the last 3. God bless you. These are theocrats. Let me be very clear about what we just heard. This has been litigated. The 5th Amendment applies to the United States. The reason we needed a 14th Amendment is because guess who wasn't included in the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution, or the Constitution, as full humans, African people, and indigenous people. The 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution is when the concept of citizenship was codified. This is the point she was making. So people talking about people here illegally, people here illegally. MF, you're the first one that came here illegally, you bastard, but there was no citizenship rule. You took this land from the indigenous people and then wrote a document that did not establish a rule excluding people on the concept of citizenship, only on the concept of humanity, which you claim for yourself, and created a legal universe that excluded everybody but white people. And white people was to be determined by you, as the Irish in the 19th century. Anyway, the point is this. The 14th Amendment, after a bloody civil war, and perhaps we're on the verge of another one, who knows? But the point is this, the 14th Amendment came in to codify who was or wasn't a citizen. And while the 5th Amendment, as she said, reads that no shall any person be subject to the same offense to be put twice in jeopardy of life or limb, that's double jeopardy, nor shall be compared in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. It said person, not citizen. Now let's go to the 14th Amendment, which was passed because the Dred Scott decision said in 1857 that black people had no rights that any white person was bound to respect, because if in Massachusetts they decided to give you citizenship, that was fine. If in Texas they decided not to, that was fine. Because as Africans, we weren't part of the legal universe. The 14th Amendment was passed for that reason. Now, the clown now thinks it only applies to black people, but he should shut his damn mouth. Now, the point is this, finally, the 14th Amendment, Section 1. All persons born and naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state in which they reside. That is a direct shot at Roger Taney, who said that you're a citizen of a state and the United States. He made up a legal fiction of federal citizenship as if you can be a citizen of the United States and there's some place where it's not subject to the polity or the jurisdiction of the United States. But that's fine. They cured it there. But the problem, what they're going after birthright citizenship for is the second part of that first sentence, which says subject to the jurisdiction thereof. It's a lie. The Kim Wong-Ark case settled that. That was a guy who was born in San Francisco, whose parents had come from China, and he is one of the few people in the United States Supreme Court history who has his name in a decision. If somebody said, you're not a citizen, he said, my name Kim Wong-Ark. The Supreme Court said I was a citizen, didn't stop when he went to El Paso, Texas a few years later. Them crackers down there arrested him and accused him of not being a citizen, and it took him months to prove he was, with a Supreme Court with his case with his name on it in his back pocket. But the important, and here is the important sentence in the 14th Amendment. It says, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States, same as the 5th Amendment, nor shall any state deprive any person, not citizen, person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That's the due process clause. But here's the problem. Well, we just heard this white nationalist, God bless you. You can put the whole Constitution. In other words, who gonna check me, as you always say, Reese? The problem is this. What these white boys are trying to do, white boys and girls, they want judges to say in the 14th Amendment and in the 5th Amendment, well, the 14th Amendment is the important one here because that's the citizenship clause. When they said person, they meant citizens. When people say, no, they said persons, they said, no, go back to Section 1 at the beginning. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to jurisdiction thereof. There's enough air in there for the right-wing judge to say, yeah. So the interpretation I'm going to give, this is what they teach in law school when they start talking about statutory interpretation. I interpret person in that second sentence to mean citizen, as it is should be controlled by the first sentence. It's a fringe argument. It never had any breath in it. But because you Negroes decided that elections don't matter, and then because the Democratic Party does silly things, Like, let people die in office. You know, the last 8 members of the federal legislature, 7 in the House and 1 in the Senate, that died in office, all of them was Democrats, 215 to 214 last election. Connolly of Virginia, you got Grijalva of Arizona, Sylvester Turner in Texas, and before that, Pascrell of New Jersey, Jackson Lee of Texas, Payne of New Jersey, Feinstein of California, Senator Feinstein, and McKeeshan of Virginia. Everybody died in office. It got close enough to steal, and now we got to go on this hell ride together. Jasmine Crockett can't explain this to them any clearer, but they don't care. They don't care. The law is whatever the hell the judge says it is, and if you don't agree with the judge don't agree with you, and you're the president of the United States, you know what they can do? They can ignore the law, and we're going to be in the streets. This is a serious thing now.
You okay, Greg?
Reese and Nola, one of y'all want to follow that?
I mean, goddamn.
Well, I mean, I'll go. You know, Dr. Carr, obviously, he held it down. He held it down.
No.
Here's the thing that people don't understand about this whole, the real danger of this due process thing is that this administration will pack your ass up and put you on a plane, and you'll be in somebody's seat cot in South Sudan. They trying to get people in Libya before anybody had a chance to say boo. And you could be a citizen. There are people, they've admitted, that have protected status. Kilmar, Brego Garcia, and they still like, fuck it, we're not bringing it back. Right. And so the danger of not having due process is also a danger to U.S. citizens, because how you know that they're going to get it right? They don't care to get it right. They've literally said they don't care to get it right. Just like the case in Oklahoma where these roided up ICE agents and all these multi-agency people, but nobody wants to cop to it, raided a house of a U.S. citizen, made them come outside, get searched, stole their goods, and then they said, we weren't there. That's where the due process part comes in. And so anybody who thinks, well, I don't think that immigrants should have due process. I don't think if you here illegally, what you need due process for? Okay, when they pack your black ass up, and your family is in front of the Capitol steps trying to get you back, even though you're a U.S. citizen, they're like, well, we're talking about birthright citizenship. Should they really be a citizen? Should they really be this? Well, both of their parents wasn't citizens. When they having that argument while you sitting in somebody's jail, then we can have a conversation about why due process is important for everybody. Nobody has any illusions that due process is equally applied. We know this justice system doesn't treat anybody equally, especially not Black people. That's not the case. That's not the argument that's being made. But due process has to exist for everybody's benefit. It's not a gift. It's not some charity that we're giving to some people who shouldn't really be here by somebody's judgment. It's something that we all need to hold on to for dear life. And we still, even with due process, might end our asses up in Libya or South Sudan. We still might do that. But if we got a little bit more of a chance to stay here because the judge says, well, you know, this is your birth certificate. It does say that you're supposed to be here. Then we need to make sure that we keep that going just for as long as we can.
You're right.
And Nola, these fools had better recognize that Donald Trump will absolutely attempt to send Americans out of the country. He's already said it. And of all the people who say, well, I know he said it, but no, if they say it, believe those assholes gonna do it.
Absolutely. And Marco Rubio is parroting the same talking points. Now, that's the part that scares me, right? When you have the Secretary of State parroting the same things. Like, I understand, yes, you serve at the pleasure of the president, but this is scary because if I'm not mistaken, Rubio's also a lawyer, right? Mm-hmm. So here you have the Secretary of State, who's also a trained attorney, talking about, well, you know, it kind of due process depends. That is we are in very, very slippery slope territory, and they keep saying it over and over, and they're normalizing it for people who don't understand the nuances, and that's what they're banking on, is the people who don't understand the nuances to grow this apathy amongst the American public to where we're looking the other direction. And here, you know, in the cloak of night, like the other night on the Hill where they were trying to pass that bill, you know, here we are sitting looking around like, wait a minute, what happened to due process? You know what I mean? And that's where this is heading. And for people who do not believe that this is a slow rolling coup, This, like Greg said, and I understand his passion, I totally get it 1000%, especially when this is something that you trained in and this is something that you believe in, and to see what's happening to it, it is heartbreaking, right? And it's infuriating. But I'm telling you, one day we're going to wake up because we were so distracted with being bombarded with so much, right? That we are going to be a country with no rules, no laws. And that's scary territory. And further, I'll say that I'm really concerned. I'm really concerned. We're people that are heavily, that we pay attention to the news and news cycles. We're really involved. And I am really, really concerned because there really aren't any checks and or balances. The way in which the Republicans have done this thing, it's like they have blanketed, every single lever of the government. And then in Congress, the people, I need y'all to understand how important 26 is. And before we get there, they will try to pull something. They are going to try to do something to interrupt the 2026 elections. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, we can't stay at home because of it. Our lives are on the line here, people. They are trying to do away with due process. They are trying to do away with the Constitution.
That's right.
That is the foundational document of this country. And like Greg said, that document has not always served us. It has not always worked in our favor. But the larger point is, it doesn't matter because we're talking about the nuts and bolts of what keeps this country together, what keeps this democracy together. Mm-hmm. And we are hanging off a cliff. Mm-hmm. And I need y'all to understand how important 2026 is, how important your local elections are every single Tuesday. Y'all have to be civically engaged. We are in trouble.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.